Okay, I have seen a sort of a steady drop in people joining, so we'll go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone to Hospitality Essentials. Um, this is basically going to be like a practical guide in terms of the hospitality, how to get it done, and sort of some additional things regarding hospitality in general. So, hopefully, by the end of the presentation, we'll have more than enough time to answer any questions. Um, and we can also walk through, I'm hoping to walk through the website and show you where different things are related to hospitality. Maybe we can even walk through kind of how to set one up. So really quick, I know I've mentioned this in the past, but for anybody who hasn't heard it, we absorb the hospitality function from our partners down in contracts and procurement. So effective May 1, it came over to us. We've redone the form, that form, and we've made some checklists. The policy is relatively new. And so we have a few different things that will hopefully help along the way in case, a few weeks from now you find yourself preparing a hospitality form and get a little bit stumped. I'll show you where some of those resources are. The major changes to the policy between the old and the new. The big change you're going to notice is the table down at the bottom of this slide. It's the meal allowance per person between the old and the new. So as you can see, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and light refreshments have all increased. So that's probably going to be the biggest change you're going to notice. Um, from there, other changes include things like the approver limits increased to 2,500 from 1,000 on the DOA. And for anybody that doesn't know, DOA means delegation of authority. Increases to gift limits and some clarifications on state funds versus auxiliary and which should be used in which scenarios. But to dive into this, one of the or I guess two of the biggest components of the hospitality form and the hospitality in general is the business purpose and the explanation of the proposed benefit that we expect to receive. That is where you should really spend some time to really identify the why, if you will. Um, this is really critical, and I'm can't stress this enough because a year from now, 2 years from now, even 3 years from now, if an auditor comes in and starts to pull some of these hospitality forms, um, this is where we're going to start. So it should be written clearly enough that there would be little to no follow-up questions. Um, just given that, I have trouble remembering what happened yesterday, let alone 3 years from now. So you should really make sure that you nail this down from the get-go. And so, just as an explanation, right, the business purpose should adequately describe the expense as necessary, reasonable, and appropriate for the university. It has to be all three of those. And the explanation of the benefit should adequately explain how the expense that we're incurring is supporting the mission of the CSU and the daily or ongoing department operation. So um, this should be written not only clearly enough for an auditor, but clearly enough so that your approver can also gather all the information from not only the form and your explanations, but from any potential backup documentation to be able to assert and sign off on the fact that it is necessary, reasonable, and appropriate, and that we are doing this for a reason that would support the mission. So it serves a twofold. Um, so to give some examples of what this might look like, um, I have some on the slide here. This is regarding just a business purpose on this slide. We have three categories, right? Food and beverage. An appropriate business purpose is lunch provided to employees for all day training with no break for lunch, right? It's strong enough to show that who's going to be attending, It's providing the why in this particular case. It's because, it was an all-day meeting. No break was provided. So it supported the agenda or the program. Um, an insufficient business purpose, and we do see this, is something short like lunch for training. That doesn't really explain why we needed to use the state funds to provide lunch to employees. It's not a strong enough. It's not a necessity. An auditor would question this left and right. So that's one example for food and beverage. For awards, gifts, promo items, that's another category. So as you can see, faculty member Smith to receive award for 30 years of service. So it identifies the who, the affiliation, the why. Insufficient is award for employee service. And that is in this particular category important because there are some additional sort of caveats to that. Um, Basically IRS rules that govern sort of awards and stuff. So it triggers other things for us to look at. But you stating for the 30 years of service helps to answer some of those questions that arise from some of these other things that we need to look at. Um, and so that's why I wanted to sort of outline um, the comparison between the two submissions, right? For an event, insufficient would be experience CSUF. That just sounds like it sounds more like an ad, right? Just hey, experience CSUF, come on down. But experience CSUF is the name of the event. So experience CSUF to attract students for possible enrollment. So it's telling us why we're spending this money. It's because we're trying to attract and enroll students. And so it expands further. It provides the explanation, hopefully enough for somebody to be able to make the determination that the funds are approved to be used, and down the line that it doesn't get questioned too much more. For the explanation, the center column, same categories, but the center column, I also moved over those appropriate business purposes, but now we're going to talk about the benefit. And so that's where you're going to explain a little bit further as to or I guess it substantiates is a better way to put it. It substantiates further the reasoning for making this expenditure. And so for the food and beverage that we talked about earlier, it's to advance and extend the knowledge of university employees and provide opportunities for individuals to develop intellectually, personally, and professionally within their careers. So it gives you that extra bit of magic, I guess, you need to stand up an audit and to an approver and to show that this really is necessary and appropriate. And it's further driving our mission in the ways that we're mentioning. For the award, gift, promo item, to cultivate employee morale while demonstrating gratitude and appreciation for staff and faculty who have dedicated their time and service to the university. And lastly, for the event, to encourage and provide access to all who are prepared for and wish to pursue a degree. That is the essence of the CSU mission. So that's how that's all tying together. Um, these are just examples that, we came up with on the spot for these categories. I'm sure you can come up with much better ones for your events because you're directly involved with them. But I just wanted to outline sort of the extent that you should try to go to in order to document the event and capture that purpose and that explanation. Some tips for submissions. We strongly encourage that you submit your hospitality justification forms for pre-approval. It would be ideal for you to know before you make these expenses that they're approved to be made. It would uh, it would create some difficult, I guess, situations. We can say if you went and made all of your purchases and then we found out later that they weren't authorized. So it helps to avoid those types of situations. It also helps when you do your pre-approvals. It also helps because something might come up that you're probably not entirely sure of. And then if you ask, maybe we can't proceed in, this way, but we can help you identify better ways to move forward. So that's why the pre-approval is strongly recommended. Um, so highly encouraged. And again, ask us, go ahead and send us a question, let us know what your issue is, and we'll work to help you reach your goal the best way possible so that we can ensure we're within compliance all around. And after you get your hospitality justification form signed and your event occurs, if you're submitting for payment after the event, make sure you attach, or even before, you can attach your hospitality justification form to your check request. If you're submitting for a check request, or if it's a P card, you would attach that to your reconciliation. The hospitality justification form is not going to be all that you need to attach. You're probably going to have, and I say probably because it depends on how you pay, but you might have like an invoice if it's for a check request or a receipt. If it's P card, you're going to need agendas or flyers. You're going to need additional items to support the expenditure once you go either to the reconciliation or the check request process. And so, yeah, here we talk about a little bit more about the P card, which I just went over really quickly. And if you have questions outside of this presentation, you can send them over to ap@fullerton.edu. If it's regarding the hospitality policy, if it's regarding P card, feel free to send that over to our partners down at ebusiness@fullerton.edu. Um, and then again, pre-approval, and this kind of goes for most things. Pre-approval doesn't necessarily guarantee that an item will be reimbursed. And I know the question is, what do you mean? How can that happen? Well, let's say, for example, you're going to have a catering event for some event you're going to have, and then I don't know. This is probably a more extreme example, but I don't know. It wasn't caught or it wasn't explicitly listed on the quote probably that there would be alcohol. That kind of stuff, it's not allowed on state funds. So it won't process through the state side. So it's again probably like an extreme example, but the idea is there that something could happen that's not allowable. So just because you're approved to make the expenditure doesn't mean necessarily that you're granted that reimbursement. There's still potentially hiccups that can arise. Issues that we commonly see, right? We talked about this earlier. The justification portion is not substantial enough. It's too succinct. It's not sort of detailed enough to support the purpose for for the expenditure. Not calculating the per person rates. So, that can cause or lead to exceeding the per person rates that we went over earlier for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not including guest lists or number of attendees, not identifying where the groups or how they're affiliated. So, not including invites, mislabeling promotional items versus gifts to students, that has additional consequences that we need to look out for. Um, Staff meals versus staff parties, that kind of stuff is what we run into a lot, and sort of potentially the way you write your business purpose and your proposed benefit can hopefully help you avoid some of these issues. Not all, but definitely some of them. Okay, so I want to pivot now and move over to our website. So this is like our main services, forms, and policies page of our website. For anybody that hasn't noticed, it's been revamped. It's a little bit different now. There's flags over here there's that you can click to kind of narrow down what you want to look for. And so we have all of the hospitality items here. It's also in alphabetical order, which is great. But if you click on any of these, or if you want to email it to someone, you can copy the direct link. It'll open up whatever you might. So, for example, here, if I were to click this, it would open up the policy. I know that when you first open it, it only has it kind of opens up this way with just the purpose, and then you can go through. Some people don't necessarily like that, but you can hit open all and have everything in front of you. Um, or if there's something in particular you're looking for, you can always type it in the search, and then it'll start searching the document, sort of guiding you to your specific reason for looking at the policy. So hopefully this makes it a little bit easier to read or a little easier to kind of comb through for your particular scenarios. Um, but let's take a look at the form itself. So this is the form itself. I've heard some feedback over the last few weeks about some issues with Adobe Sign. So I want to let you know this isn't it yet. It's gonna probably take about a day or so to reflect on the website. Um or it could be a little bit longer, but I'm hoping it'll probably be about a day or so. But essentially, what's happening is because this was blank, when you moved it over to Adobe Sign, you were getting errors. We've found a solution for that. So the new form, once it's posted, it won't generate that issue. I won't necessarily bore you with the details, but back to the form itself. Um, at the top, you can kind of indicate what funds you're planning on using, slash who you're going to be submitting to, whether you're going to be submitting this to the campus side, or if you want to go through the foundation or ASC, whoever it might be. So you would select one, right? So let's say we're going to do it through the campus. Um, and let's put today's date, right? This top part is sort of self-explanatory, I think, but it's basically who's preparing this. Um, and then, okay, so I want to pause here on the requisition side. Um, I know you may not have a requisition. So a lot of this form, not everything is going to necessarily apply to you, and that's okay. You don't need to utilize it. If I am, for example, gonna be, I don't know, purchasing some sort of promo item, just I don't know why, but let's just say I'm purchasing only one promo item, say $50 or something. That wouldn't necessarily require a requisition. Versus, let's say I'm planning a bigger scale event where I might have catering. Um, you can put your requisition number in there. If you have one, it's there for you to be able to enter it. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need one. So if you don't have one, feel free to skip the box. The total amount, you don't need to put anything there. It's going to automatically populate once you start filling out the bottom part. So that part can just be left alone. The event or activity name, that's just what is the reason that you're going to make this expenditure, right? So typically, if it's, say, for example, staff training, you can enter that. That part doesn't have to have a name necessarily in terms of like we went over earlier, like, experience CSUF or anything like that. It could be just your event. If there's an official host, there may not be. That's usually for an event, but you don't need to fill that one out. And let's say the event is going to take place a month from now. We would put the date, and the time is going to be, I don't know, 8 a.m. because we're early birds and we can't wait to get to the staff training. Kind of like today, I'm sure. The location, maybe it's at, I don't know, at the library, let's say, right? Number of attendees, maybe I'm expecting 25. Perhaps I'm going to have a sort of a longer meeting and I might be providing some breakfast. So I can hit this drop down here and hit the food and beverage. I might know who I'm going to work with. Maybe it's Chartwells because they're on campus. Um, maybe it's, I don't know, I see other ones like Jay's Catering or something like that. Maybe you don't have one. Maybe that's still part of your requisitioning process. That's fine too. You can leave that blank. Um, and if needed by your approver, you can provide that additional information later. Um, let's say, for example, though, that I know it's going to be Chartwells and it's going to be, I don't know, let's say $600. I don't know. And we already have chart whales on file. And I know that because I've worked with them in the past. Maybe you don't know, you don't need to check that box, or maybe you're working with another vendor and you know you need a queue number. You're going to request it or already have. That's what that box is intended for. Again, not super critical if you don't need that or don't have it yet. Okay, so kind of moving forward here. Um, maybe maybe I know it's going to be 600. I wanted to kind of touch base on one last thing. Maybe I know it's going to be 600. I have 25 attendees. That's $24 a person. That's way under the policy limit listed there, $45. So there's no need to check the yes here. It's not going to exceed the policy, right? But I don't know, say for some reason it's a lot higher and you know that it's breaking the policy, you can select that so that your approver is aware and then you can get started on any exceptions. It's probably rare that that would happen, but just in case you happen to know and you have an explanation for that, you can provide that on the exception form and we'll get into that in a minute. But for now, $600 under the limit. So that works out. And maybe I'm also gonna have some uh sure some team building activities. I don't know, say 150. And then maybe we're gonna have some prizes, like a raffle or something. Um we'll say we'll say 200 there. So as you can see, that's sort of automatically calculating there. And for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll go ahead and just sort of um, leave it at that. Maybe I don't have anything else. And also, just in case this comes up, because I do get this question a lot, is do I have to put everything on one form? Like in this particular example, the food, the team building activity, the prize. Do I have to put everything on one form? My approver prefers that I do it on separate forms. Yeah, that's fine. I recommend that you put it all together though. Not on the same form, but put all three forms together so that they have a clear picture. Or maybe you have another way of tracking that. Maybe you have an Excel sheet where you track that. Make sure that they have a clear picture because if you're giving them one piece at a time, right? Maybe this week I'm giving my approver the form and I'm only putting the food for 600. So he's like 600, that's fine. And then a week from now, I decide to do the team building activity, and that's going to cost me 150. And then he's like, 150, that's fine. But maybe he forgot about the $600 from last week. And maybe now there's a budgetary issue. That's the only scenario where you might run into an issue that I can see, not the only, but that I can see an issue there. So if you do want to do it separately, I understand that you have your process. Just make sure you provide them something that tells them the total impact because part of an approver's role is to determine that what we're doing can't be done less expensive some other way, right? Um, so anyway, just wanted to throw that out there because I have heard of that question in the past. Um, so moving forward, this bottom part here, the form, as far as I have it understood, I haven't heard any differently, is accessible to both the state and the auxiliaries. So here's where you can put in some of that information regarding your account codes. Maybe you happen to know, and I maybe you happen to know what fund you're going to use, right? The general fund, and then yeah, but you probably don't have a program or a class code, and that's okay. Um, or maybe you do. Maybe you have to split it because you're going to be using a couple different sources of funding that you have available to you. You can provide that information there. If you know the account number, feel free to type it in there. In this particular case, I'm spacing out on an account number, so I'm just going to leave that blank for now, but you would put an account number there if you know where you're going to spend it towards. Your payment method, uh, that's just how you're expecting to pay for this. And it could be that you're going to use an auxiliary P card, right? Maybe you know that. In this particular case, it could be that I'm going to use a state P card. Or maybe I'm doing something small, right? And I'm going to only need, say, for example, here, I'm going to only need $45. Maybe I know I'm going to do it under the petty cash, or maybe I'm going to keep this the way that it is, and I'm going to pay for it out of pocket for some reason, and the 200, and I'm going to request reimbursement. It's basically built so that you can kind of identify how you might plan on paying, because that might also bring up additional questions. Maybe on the P card side, right? Maybe my approver needs to know because there's other expenditures going on in the month and they may need to request an increase. So that's kind of what we're looking for. If you are planning on using, say, a vendor that's not on the approved vendors list on the contracts and procurement website, and you know you need to go for a queue number, maybe you already did because you're a go-getter, and you happen to have that number, you can type it in there. If you don't have it yet, that's fine too. But if you did have it, you can sort of write it in there. And sort of moving forward, um, uh, for the justification, that's the section that we were sort of discussing earlier. So in this particular case, um, we said it was staff training. Yeah, staff training. So we can write something like what was on the example, right? So to advance, I spelled that wrong. Advance and extend the knowledge of university. I'm trying to remember what university employees uh, provide opportunities for professional development. Um, oh, I spelled that wrong. Development. Trying to think of what else we can write. And cultivate because I have the team building activity. Cultivate. Um, employee morale. I imagine this is not necessarily easy to do at any point, but it's much harder during a live demonstration. So, especially with a made-up event. But to cultivate employee morale, let's just say, for our purposes now, that probably is not strong enough, but just for the sake of time, we would finish it off kind of like I did with the example and talk about a little bit more about, you know, um, the employees' growth and then the morale leading to thanks sort of for the dedication of time, whatever the case is. Okay, so um, now let's say that I'm the preparer and and I see Joe is on the call, and Joe is in my department, and he has a P card. So I know that Joe's going to pay for it with his P card. So we would need Joseph's name here. Joseph's name. And this is for the reconciliation purposes. So if you're going to use a P card, you have to make sure whoever's card is going to be used ends up being here. Now we understand that today I might say Joe's going to do it. But maybe the event comes and that's when you have to pay. And Joe is out sick. And I need to pull on somebody else on the team, like Kathleen. So if that happens, I go through today on my pre-approval. Obviously, we can't expect Joe is going to be sick. You can process it through. If later you find out Joe couldn't make it and I needed to get Kathleen, make sure you obtain the other person's signature, the card holder, and put it on the form when you submit for the reconciliation, because we need to see that on the reconciliation. Um, so it can be put anywhere that has space on the form, or there's two boxes here, and I get a lot of questions about the boxes. What we have to make sure of is that one of these two is signed by somebody with delegation of authority over the fund that you're using. So in my case, right, my approver would be Michael, the university controller. So I would make sure that Michael is here at least on one of those lines. Um, the second one is optional for um, many divisions. I think for academic affairs, it's a requirement. I think please check with your department in terms of that sort of designation because that's coming from your division. But if that's not the case for you, and later I find out that I need the second signature and this is available, feel free to use it. It'll help for the reconciliation, like I was saying, for the P card. But just double check. Sometimes these procedures deviate slightly and within your departments, and that's okay. Just make sure that you can put the signature somewhere else on the form. So that kind of covers the form. Now, let's say, for example, I knew I was going to be breaking the policy. Say the prize and award wasn't actually for, three people. It was for one. That would, or yeah, let me change this a little bit. Let's say it was for one, and that's above the limit. Then I would need to get an exception. So the exception form listed here. It's much simpler. Hopefully that's helpful. But it's so that you can kind of quickly just get the information across to the individual signing. Um, so who did I say sign this form? Let's just say it's Joseph. Joseph's going to need this exception memo for his P card reconciliation, right? So for the gifts, the maximum is 200. So we're going to say uh, gift purchase exceeds $200 max came in at 220. And then you can here explain why. Um, I don't know why that would happen necessarily, but let's say um, quote and ended up being lower than actual due to cost increase. I don't know. But you should thoroughly explain your reasoning because your approver, in this case, it's going to be the exception signer typically is going to go to the vice president. And by typically, I mean always. So make sure you have enough detail to support it so that they can approve it and they can address it if it's something else, right? If it's with a vendor that I don't know. The point is, you should have enough explanation in there to address it so that if we get to audit, we can explain why it happened, why it needed to happen, and why it was okay to sign. Um, so that's the exception form. And again, your vice president will sign off on that for your division. So on ours, it would be order, and then vice president, and then finance. So that's the form. Sort of. Hopefully, it's simple to use. I'm going to clear that because we don't need it. But some of the other things that are on the website are we have checklists for the approvers, things to keep in mind while you're reviewing. We have a similar list for requesters. Again, things to keep in mind depending on what event it is you're trying to put together. Delegation of authority, this is important. You can check this on OBIEE. There's a tab for the delegation of authority. If you want to double check before you send out for signature, you can do so. If somebody's not there, you can fill this out and submit it. We will it comes to us and then we will work with IT to make sure that it gets updated on the OBIE report. Um, and then lastly, I wanted to showcase for prizes and awards. Please remember to fill this out. And I kind of touched upon this briefly, but um, prizes and awards in particular to depending on the prize slash award, cash prizes or cash equivalents, which means gift cards, gift certificates, things like that. Um, for an employee is always reportable on payroll, so you should fill this out in preparation for us to have we're legally required to report it. For students, non-cash, like just talking non-cash awards, um, it depends on the circumstances whether or not it may affect their aid. So fill this out so that you know, we know that we're going through the process of making sure we vet it completely under audit. This is one of the backups that they will ask for, and they're going to follow the trail to make sure that if it was to a student and it's a reportable prize, that we ran it through financial aid. Even if it wasn't, say for example, and I don't know why this would happen, but let's just say there was a some sort of prize and it was over $600, it has to be reported, which if the individual recipient is a non-US citizen, there's tax implications. We have to withhold legally upfront. So at the top, we're required to do that. So this has to be collected for any sort of prize and award. So it's on the website. Um, and we're working with financial aid on hopefully some additional um, mechanisms to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of student awards. So keep that in mind. So I wanted to quickly go back and ask everybody that's here before we move into the questions and answers, if you can please take our survey. We greatly appreciate your feedback. It helps to identify what your needs are and sort of modify the presentation for a future go around. Maybe there's something we didn't touch upon that you would like for us to cover with a little more in depth. Please leave your feedback. We really appreciate it. So that being said, I think I saw a few questions come in on the chat. So I'll start there. So Sean, can we leave the time and location blank if both are still undecided? I.e., is it better to request early or wait until you have all the details? Yeah, you don't have to have the time necessarily. You might not even have the date, kind of like you're referencing, but maybe you know you want to do it in May. It's good for you to put that information if you have it. If you don't have it, I can see how it can go through. Just I would suggest you write like it may not fit in the box, but if you want to provide that explanation to your approver and tell them, look, this is what we want to do. We're working early to get to secure, I don't know, say like the catering or I don't know, whatever what it is you're trying to obtain. But we're still not settled on whether we're gonna go with May or June, just given that the location is popular during that time. Whatever the case is, provide that explanation. Should be fine. But if you happen to
Oh, I'm
know,
sure there's more than just that form.
y yes. Okay. So Alina is with alumni engagement, used both the foundation and state funds. Would I check off at the top state and CSFPF? I would say if you're gonna, so if you know, for example, on the one that I had, the test one that I was using, if you know that you have, say 4 categories that you're gonna use, and you know up front that, maybe your catering is going to be paid out of the foundation, but your other items might be paid out of the state. Separate them. Separate them into 2 forms so that it's a little bit more clear where it's coming from, and then submit them together. That might be easier on your approver.
Okay, thank you. I did not want to one as well. So it just kind of goes together.
Yes, there was a little bit of an echo, but I think I kind of heard you. But yeah, so that should work. And then I think you had a follow-up question. What happens if you're using multiple cards with different card holders? Yeah, so kind of like I was saying, if it ends up being like that, make sure you get the card holder signature because that is a requirement for the reconciliation on for the P card side. So either add them if you have space on the form itself, add them somewhere. If you don't and you want to separate it, um, uh, for example, you're saying multiple, say you have three, kind of like with what I just mentioned with your last question. If you happen to know that up front and you want to separate it because of that, feel free to do so. And then, yeah, oh, yeah, Sean answered too. Yeah, good job, Sean. Thank you. Um, Yes, the host of the event is the signer in each form is good for one event. That's probably true that the host might be the signer of each of the forms, but it's not always true. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you check the delegation of authority to be sure. Where would you add all their names? If you like I said, if you have the space, I would try to add it near the signature spots here. If you don't, if for whatever reason you just so happen to not, or like kind of like I was explaining earlier, let's say that um, I thought it was going to be Joe. Joe was sick, and then I, for whatever reason, don't have space on the form. You're able to just trying to move something. You're able to if you wanted to just get a new one to get the signature and attach the old one to it so that it can be kind of clear. But generally you should have kind of like, oh yeah, Sean put up a picture. Kind of like that. That works. The picture that Sean put in the chat. It had the signature, say for example, here of Joe, and then the person who actually spent the used the P card was listed right here as the signature. That works. Do we use that form for cash awards for students, award stipends? So Sandy, that's an excellent question. Let me start by saying that in the IRS realm of things, a stipend is a synonym for a payment. So, a stipend doesn't really mean anything. It just means we're paying. So, if you were to come to me and say, "I have this cash stipend for a student," my very first question is going to be, "Why? What is the purpose behind the payment?" Right? So, I need to know the details. And the reason is sometimes, not sometimes uh frequently, right? Words mean different things to us, right? Maybe I'm looking at it from the tax perspective and you're looking at it for more the academic perspective, and that's perfectly fine. But there's consequences on my end for something being phrased one way versus another way. And I'm not saying that we are going to phrase it one way or another because that's the way we want it to be treated. I'm saying we're going to look at it, we're going to identify what it actually is, and then we're going to classify it that way. So, as an example, in the past, I've had people submit stipend requests, if you will, and they wrote stipend for trying to think back, stipend for Johnny Smith, student, um, for it was for assisting professor in research. So my question then becomes, well, does Johnny have to go in every day or every week, whatever the case is? Does he have to show up and do something, or are you going to give Johnny that money, period, whether he shows up? Because now we're talking about two different things, right? So that's why it depends on the circumstance, but in general, yes. If you're not sure, use the form because it triggers those questions.
I'm
And then,
thinking of specifically of the expo. You know how we did the expos? You helped us with that. The expo money when students show up for a demonstration presentation and they get a one-time award.
oh, yeah, we've been talking to financial aid a little bit more lately to try to sort of solidify the process and sort of see situations that require their input and not. For now, definitely I would say use it just because we're still trying to
I think
finalize
it
the
sounds
process.
like I should ask before I use it because that's quite a bit of work. There's like 50 to 70 students. So I'll reach out to you when it's time
Oh
because I
yeah, 50
really,
to 70 is a lot.
yeah, I don't want to do 70 just for just in case. So I'll check with you when it comes close.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I totally understand and agree. Yes. Melissa, do on-campus facility rentals like the TSU require D11 to be classified under entertainment services, or does that only apply to offsite rentals? I think if you're going to have an event, and it's going to be at the TSU, or if it's going to be external, you should list it. Because at the end of the day, that's an expenditure against your budget. So your approver should know about it. So you should list it. I know it sounds odd, but you should list it. And so in terms of the chat, those were all of the questions. So I want to open it up in case anybody has any additional questions. And I'm also going to kind of put this back up there in case anybody wants to. Um, we have another question. I thought P card holder signature was not required. The statement of a request for responsibilities is only required if it's a direct employee to student reimbursement. I thought the P card holder signature was not required. No. Sorry, Lynn. I just want to make sure. I'm not sure if I may be misunderstanding, but so yeah, here, if you're gonna make an expenditure on your P card, e-business has asked that the P card holder's signature is on the document. The statement of payee requester responsibilities.
Hi, Alberto, because that was a topic of discussion before. And so when it came to multiple P card holders signing off, we were sharing the difficulty and the challenges because the D11 is a pre-approval for the most part. And then after the fact, we sometimes change P card holders depending on availability of support. And so in the end, we thought it wasn't required unless it was a direct reimbursement to the employee or student. That was when the statement of payee responsibilities would be truly required because it's a direct reimbursement. But with the P card, when we're doing it in advance, it could change. So are you saying we need an amended D11 every time there's a
Uh, that's okay. So you said you were talking. Did you talk about that with e-business?
no, with account payables?
I need to
Mm.
check. See, the reason I said that is because they brought it up to us. So I'm not sure if anybody from e-business is on right now. No. Let me find out for you because one of the last things I spoke to them about was that uh, what you're saying, I can see that. But my take on it from the last conversation I had with them was that they wanted the cardholder's signature. Um, but let me
Been
see, maybe
accepting
we can
ours
work out a
without
process.
the signature.
What was that?
They've been accepting ours without the signature.
Oh, okay. So maybe something changed recently. Let me double check with them.
Yeah.
To your point, I understand what you're saying because this is sort of the pre-approval. If the expenditure was made this was already filled out and approved. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if I thought Joe was going to make this purchase for me and Michael signed off on that, and then Kathleen ended up making the purchase and we're on the same department, then the purchase was already approved anyway, so I can
Mhm.
see that. But the last I had heard was that they wanted it. So let me double check with them because that's an excellent point you're bringing up.
That would require
Um,
a lot of amended D11s, is what
yeah,
I'm.
well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't request the like you necessarily. Man, I would just say get a that other signature on there. Um, but I point taken. I totally hear you. Let me double check with them then again, just in case. If they've been accepting it, then maybe there's been a change that I'm not aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know.
Absolutely,
Like to
yeah.
make sure we're following the policy correctly.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And I want to make sure I'm directing you the right way. Um, so I'll double check if anybody isn't already signed up for our DL AP and travel updates. I'll probably send the notification out there, or I'll see if I can get the listing of attendees and I'll send the update there.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So okay, so I'm gonna leave this up just in case anybody needs to capture it, but I wanna just quickly double check. Is there any other questions we can answer at this moment? If not, feel free to email us. But I just wanted to open it up one more time. There's about 8 minutes left or so on the schedule. Okay. Not hearing anything, and I don't think I saw anything on the chat. So that being said, I really want to thank everybody for attending today. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the really good questions, and I want to thank you for your time. Let you know there's still a lot more trainings coming up. There's one tomorrow on check requests, and please check the training catalog for all the additional fun trainings coming up. Thanks, everyone.